and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk at pioneer-ks.org.
My name is Beth Carey. Where I am today is sunny, or not so sunny, Austin, Texas. I absolutely love working in the machine intelligence field, which, as you probably know it, artificial intelligence. And the reason is because it can have such a positive impact on society. But more of that later. My most fantastic job, what did I love the most? When I was working for an organisation, I guess that would be for IBM. I spent a couple of years facilitating leadership development because of all the great empowerment you can give in tools and discussion, collaborating with new managers and potential managers. So I love that development aspect. Today, what am I doing? Well, I'm a co-founder in my own startup. I've partnered with cognitive scientist John Ball around his innovation, which is language understanding for machines. I am inspired when I see development happening and people like interns working for us from universities, and they have an epiphany, or you can see the lights go on about something that they've learned from what we're doing. I love that. I love seeing the curiosity around the topics that will change the world for the better in the future. So what do I see that future as being? Well, I see all of society benefiting from what we do in artificial intelligence, and that's a big order. And some of the problems that we're facing as a society, I'm sure we'll get into very shortly with Edwin. So finally, if I was stranded on an island, my top 3 must-haves are Wi-Fi, coffee, and my husband. And I'm not saying that's the order. They're the 3 I need.
Thank you. Where did you first get introduced to machine language or machine learning?
Great question, Edwin. Let me think. My inspiration, if I can segue to that, was with my co-founder, seeing what his passion was around brain science and linguistics. So I was more drawn to the area that is possibly a more marketing term, but the area of artificial intelligence because of that.
I guess tell me more exactly what that is, what it is that he has got off the ground here.
Okay, so when he was an undergrad, he was passionate or became obsessed with how do you make machines operate like a brain, understand human language. So I say a passion, but I think it was more an obsession for him. Mm-hmm. And so it was ticking away in the background for, decades. As I got closer to it, it became inspiring for me because I'd done an undergrad myself in applied science and was interested in the brain.
But I mean, we're in a linguistic comprehension and linguistic, not translation, but understanding, right? Comprehension and understanding. So where does that cognition come from in a machine?
So if you emulate what the brain does and then try and apply it to a machine, that's where I guess the magic happens, because when you think about our brain, it's pretty well known that it's extremely efficient and it doesn't need all the compute resources.
For some. for some.
Okay, so that analogy applies a lot of the time.
All right. Well, where did you make the crossover from IBM? I mean, what put you on the path you're on now with this developmental course?
The timing was right from John Ball's point of view for me to join and look at what we could do commercially with this research and development. Part of the journey along the R&D journey was in one of the significant milestones was in 2012 that he came across a linguistic framework from Professor Emeritus Robert D. Van Valen Jr. And that linguistic framework is called role and reference grammar. That was what kicked off the recognition that, hey, this is really something that can be exploited and leveraged for machines.
Can you give me that name again? Rollins Reference Language? Is that what you said?
It's role and reference grammar. Role,
Okay.
R-O-L-E. Sorry about that Australian accent.
That's all right. Role and reference.
Yes.
Apparently that gave a leg up in what he was trying to achieve.
It was like the missing piece, if you asked him. He'd spent his time looking at his research, looking at what the brain does, and then he realised he didn't actually know how languages worked.
Right.
And he was in a bookstore in New Jersey, and he found a book. Credit to Emma Pavey, her book titled The Structure of Language, and in it was an introduction to this, what we think is a revolutionary linguistic framework called role and reference grammar, or RRG.
What does that connection enable this to do now?
The RRG came out of a thesis from back in the 70s between Van Valen and his colleague Bill Foley. They looked at what would a linguistic framework look like if it actually covered all those diversely structured languages. So instead of starting with English or Spanish or a popular language, they looked at languages like Austronesian, Tagalog from the Philippines, Australian Aboriginal, and the Native American language Lakota.
So that gave a different frame of reference. I'm sure the number of terms is much less as for some of these cultures. So is it a volume thing or a meaning thing, or what was
Oh my gosh, Edwin, you're stealing all my words. It was meaning. It was all about meaning. So as humans, we're communicating about the world's objects in the world. But we have very different words and phrases, and the diversity of languages is enormous, as you're alluding to. But the commonality is meaning. And so if you think of what that means, we've got 6,000 odd languages in the world, and yet what technology has been most focused on or most able to achieve understanding, or not so much understanding, but generating, is in those most populous languages.
Well, how does that translate to this target ultimate machine interface?
So John Ball was, or I think he'd say he still is, really a computer engineer at heart. But he looked at, or had to expand his horizons to know more about how the brain worked. So he knew because I don't want to give away ages here, Edwin, but because he may have finished his undergrad in the 80s and he may have started his corporate IT career around that time, he actually learnt how mainframes and computers really work. Mm-hmm. So he was able to use the benefits and the restrictions of how machines work, to then say, well, how do I apply a linguistic framework to a machine? Mm-hmm. And so that cleverness or that magic is around his theory, how brain works, which is pattern theory, and the right linguistic framework that actually looked at, over the same sort of period of time in parallel, the world's languages and how they worked.
Well, it sounds easy enough.
Yeah. So maybe there's no more to talk about, Edwin, because...
Well, I mean, the ultimate is that you're going to have environmental computing to where the interface is just voice. I mean, is that where we're going?
Yeah. We call it the ultimate machine interface. It's language. Kudos to the 70s and the 80s of how do we get a computer interface with a GUI and constantly improving. Now the kudos goes perhaps to the generative AI that have shown a leap forward. Hey, look at people want to communicate with language. And so there's been a rush to how do we use that generative AI?
Well, explain to me what that is.
So that's more your machine learning and your deep learning approaches. And what they've taken a leap forward in is the way they construct sentences and the way that you can get such credible looking text and voice to interact with. And it's shown that it's just proven really that the most fundamental, most practical and easiest interface for us with machines is language.
I think that idea has been around since Jules Verne and early space-type television shows where interacting with technology was that simple.
And absolutely, Star Trek and Space Odyssey 2001, the irony, and I guess I'm stealing this from John Ball, he's recognized this for a while, Hollywood has had such wonderful ideas and forward-looking ideas about how we would interact with machines. The great progress that's been made, we're still not at that point where machines just do what we want.
I would love to get my Subaru to be able to actually understand when I say, call mom or call dad, instead of saying, setting the AM station to Christian rock. And I'm like, that's not what I said. It is, some of those interfaces are so frustrating. It's like I just pushed a button. You know what? It's just not even worth the hassle trying to get this to work. But generative means something different. Having an artificial intelligence is one thing, but generative has a underlying meaning that it's going to continually build and shape and adjust, correct?
It does. I would say it's the generation, it's the production of text based on the text that you've input to it. And it's extremely good at picking up what patterns to produce the right text to your question. The piece that's missing and that we're enabling is the understanding of what Edwin says when he's in his Subaru. When you're sitting there and you're interacting and you say, can you call mum? Oh, no, can you call my sister? That understanding that you actually you're correcting, that you're interacting in a real conversational way, that's understanding, that's what we can enable for the future.
That gives the opportunity to get some customization with the user. The interface actually goes from a static, what we all are used to is a static interface. You know, a typewriter, the interface is keys. The keys, tab, space, those are all the interface. And computers brought us, the touch screen brought us a new type. Now we went to icons. Instead of reading things, I just look for the icon. And it's still a process. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip all that process time and focus and just go strictly to language.
Yes, that's right. That's the beauty, or the beauty of it, or the opportunity of this technology. And what we want to do for society, though, is make that accessible and applicable. So it's not just Edwin and his Subaru, but it's for the older generation, for people with disability, which is pretty much all of us. We're all affected to some extent at some time by that lack of using all our senses all the way that completely seamlessly. So by starting with a language model such as the role and reference grammar, and with an approach like what the brain is actually doing, that means it's accessible, it's language understanding, and as well as the generation. So it's customized, back to, I think you used the word customized.
Customized, yeah. I'm thinking of the interaction that a user gets now when they have a login to a system. When they have a login to a system, then you can save some favorites, you can customize it to where things are left where you left them the last time you were there. And those are helpful breadcrumbs and things like that to shorten the search, shorten the connection to whatever the data is. And so the question coming up for me now is, what is the issues with accessibility for those who are not able to hear, see. How is it going to work for someone that is unable to communicate that way?
So I guess it's like curb cutting. That enables wheelchairs to use the road the route from the road to the sidewalk, but it also enables anyone with pram or a limp, or it's better for all humans. So if you have at the core of a model that it is human-like and it is designed, it's a human-centric design, then the rest follows. The opportunities then for applications to sit on the top of that language understanding interface is enormous.
Yeah.
And I know of incubators that are very successfully taking advantage of or attracting startups looking at those more accessible options. Imagine if those startups then have access to a truly human-like language understanding interface.
Then that makes that interpretation that much easier.
It makes it easier, the dialects, the various human-like, the things that make us individuals. That's what we want to cater to in every design that we come up with. And so we help that even more.
Seeing as all this seemed to start off with the synapses and the connection of the brain and how it operates in a language context, where do we make the break from machine interface to just inborn technology biologically implanted?
Oh, you're better off asking Elon Musk that, and I'll just check his calendar and see if he's available tomorrow. So you can only focus on so much, Edwin, and I'm not saying that there's...
You're gonna do that next year. I got it. I know.
Or at least next week. We've got a few more days of this week.
I think that's what people need to understand, is that the transition from how we connect is going to continually evolve. As machine learning, machine language becomes expert in comprehension, in those pain thresholds of, you know what, I'm not even going to try to communicate with this car anymore because it just never gets anything right and it doesn't learn anything. It's the same. I get the same response I did the day I bought the car. Once we get out of that broken concept of how to interact to the place where it's fluid, learning, evolving, becoming better, understanding more, and perceiving more, then the next step is to change again the interface.
And there you go, you designing the best marketing words and sales words for our company. So Edwin, I'll be in touch after this podcast and we'll be signing you up. If you look at the definition of natural language understanding in Wikipedia, it is about machine readable comprehension. So comprehension is a good word and it is possible without making sentient beings. It's possible to give machines the tools, i.e. enable them to understand language without them needing to be sentient, without them going rogue. And that comprehension is super important. And the funny thing is, and it's been noticed so many times by academics, including Emily Bender from the University of Washington and Melanie Mitchell from the Santa Fe Institute, we take it for granted what the brain does. We think that where this conversation is easy, but we don't realize how quickly you and I are decoding what each other is saying and then responding. That just seems simple. So we've got this idea, and I think Melanie Mitchell has said was the one that said this, that easy things for us are hard for a machine and vice versa. Things that are hard for a machine, if I said that right, easy for a machine are hard for us. So I think of an Excel spreadsheet. No one's as clever as an Excel spreadsheet, but it reliably and repeatedly gives you the right answer. So it's doing the heavy lifting. That's where we want to get to with language, that ultimate machine interface, where they understand even people like you, Edward.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of possibilities here. And do you have a select market you're looking to break into?
Again, the beauty of language is that it's actually not specific to an industry. But yes, we do have a GTM, and yes, we do have a focus for starting off But if you think of how a child learns language, we all learn our own native language. That's got to tell you something. The brain does something right, or the environment does something right, that together enables you to speak your native language. And by the age of 2, 3, Gary Marcus has done a lot of research and discussion about this topic. Young toddlers, children are much smarter than today's, what we call today's AI. And why is that? Because you learn that language. It doesn't mean, though, so even though you can have that intelligent conversation better than with a machine, but with a child, it doesn't mean that you don't have to go to university to learn more complex topics like medical or legal.
Well, you bring up something that I had done research on called object-based learning, and that gets back to that language construction and contextual understanding that forms in a young brain to make those connections of meaning. Touch fire, hot, touch fire, hot, ow, ow, that sort of thing. And you think of how much language a child absorbs just by environmental impact, environmental socialization. But the object-based learning is that words are translated to things, or things are assigned words. And that's where this build starts from, is this contextual relationship that gets built up here that makes meaning of words to begin with.
There you go again, stealing my thunder, Edwin. And what the technical terms could be to describe what you just described, what that brain's doing and how they're learning, it's learning like what you just articulated. It can generalize, or we generalize because of the way that we've learnt something as a child. For example, if I said, I'm eating a glub, your reaction would be, what's a glub? Exactly. And I'd say, it's a piece of fruit. And immediately you know where that, something about it. You don't know everything, but you know something.
You've got it classified into a domain. Okay, it's fruit. Okay, that helps.
It helps. Yeah. And then if I give you more associations like, oh, it's sweet, it's grown in that backward country called Australia. And by the way, it's a fictitious name. It doesn't even grow there. But the point is, as humans, we learn incrementally. It's incremental based on what we learned, however many years ago it was when we were learning language.
Well, I don't know where to go from here. I was looking up a quote because it's impactful. So give me a second here, see if I can find it. Gordon Pask is the guy's name. He's the one that came up with the concept of conversation theory.
Okay.
And the premise of conversation theory is that by two entities being in a creative capsule of a conversation will have a residual effect on the other person. Because the conversation that you and I exchange in this point in time will exist up here. Some parts and pieces will change us forever. And that's why he said, once a conversation started, it never stops. Right? There's a residual to our conversation.
Very interesting.
It may stick, it may not. It may be not conscious. It may be conscious. Gordon Pask. Where you're going with the technology, right? Because you want to have that residual stickiness where
absolutely.
You don't want it to be like Frosty the Snowman. Every day you wake up, it's a new day. You just started. There's nothing in the history banks. There's no
Groundhog Day. No, that's frustrates people.
All right. Well, we got that all figured out. So what's next?
We want to show how this improves lives, and enterprise is our market.
Okay.
It's valid across any industry, any application. And as we build out more what we call classes or predicate classes, the understanding and the comprehension becomes richer and richer, just like a child learning.
So is this going to be ultimately it'll be a subscription rate, right? I mean, you're talking about sign up for a year and try it out.
That sort of thing. Licensing to enterprises, because it doesn't require training. It's then an understanding basis for their applications.
For a large organization, this would be an on-premise application.
It can be in the cloud. It's a small footprint. It doesn't require the processing. It's a fundamental core or platform for enterprises then to communicate with their customers, and for customers to not get frustrated by that apparent loss of memory of everything they just conversed about. previously.
The other side of this coin of software that does these sorts of things, we just had a discussion the other day on the level of depth and width of like Microsoft Project, and that it's an enterprise solution, but it's not easy to roll out because there's a lot of stuff you got to do under the hood. So, but what you're saying is this is something you can set in a existing enterprise and just let it go.
Yeah, that's right. You use it. I think you're talking about the journey from the ultimate sort of chatbot interface to how you represent enterprise information and knowledge. And this is that lossless management knowledge graph that makes the enterprise's information accessible with natural language.
So when you say knowledge graph, are we talking about a visual interface with graphics?
So for the enterprise to use it, whether they're a conversational designer or a developer, that's what they will see. So that friendly interface that they can add perhaps their own special product names and words because they just introduced a new product 2 hours ago.
So that's more for the developer side. That's their interface, not so much the user interface.
If you're talking about the consumer,
all
they see, the customer, all they see is with the enterprise is that conversational interface.
Could you define for me what knowledge management is?
In my world, or I would call it the ultimate lossless storage or format to hold information. The context is held because data is language. It can be an orthogonal concept if you're brought up with databases, as most of us were. But if you store, whether it's journals, in media, whether it's all the enterprise, whether it's banking or whether it's retail, if you hold all your information in this lossless knowledge graph or format, then you've got, or your PubMed, you can store it in the right way. You can access the what, where, why, how of it endlessly and accurately because you've stored it according to the pattern theory and the role and reference grammar. And it's language independent, the storage. It's so long as the system knows of that one, which one of those 6,000 languages, knowing English, if it's got that module, then it's able to break language down into its meaning.
Is it up to the recipient, at least on the on-premise, to keep up the dictionary in that terminology list?
That's a great question. The tricky part of language is all the ways that we manipulate objects. The objects, whether you call them named entities, which your special product names, your street names, there's millions, billions of those words.
Yeah.
What is the way that we talk about those objects, and what in our parlance, they're predicates. That's the part our linguists are building, that the information or the associations required for those. A little known fact is that 50% of daily conversation is covered by 66 words.
Whoa.
2,000 to 3,000 gets you 80% daily conversation. And yet, computers have such a hard time. When Edwin asks a question one way, I ask it a different way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's thousands of different ways to say it.
So you're talking more than just synonyms. You're talking more than just alternatives to a root word. You're talking about, I guess, selective perception.
Don't know that.
Right? I meant maybe that's not the right term. Regionality. Let's go with regionality. So regionality, what a word means in Northern California is not what it means in Southern Florida. And it's the same language, it's more than just synonym. It's colloquialism, being able to tie in regional meanings.
If you think of it from a human point of view, if you don't understand something, what do? You ask for clarification.
Ask for clarification, yeah.
But language is precise in context.
Yeah.
Back to my example about the glove and all the nuances given the locations, etc. If it's understandable to another human, we might err on the side of being more general or asking, or more specific, I should say, and asking clarifying questions.
Right.
But when you built it human-like, the biggest problem and opportunity is that disambiguating or working out what a word means in context. And without context, we don't operate very well.
Well, if we can get to a machine disambiguating what a person is trying to say better than the phone interface that we now deal with, did you mean this? No, I didn't even say that. Oh my good God, another frustration pain point, right?
Yeah.
But if you can have intelligent banter back and forth to get us down to a sharp point,
Exactly.
then hallelujah, we're all happy.
Exactly.
All right, well, sign me up. I'm there. I'm
Well,
ready.
you realize that you're also the salesperson for us.
You'll get my bill in the mail. Thanks, Beth. I appreciate all that you're doing, and I'm waiting to hear more.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Andy.
You have just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org.